Now that we have some sense of how traditional journalism approaches creating stories and crafting narratives, I wanted to contrast it with the new approaches that data journalism takes to create engaging and often interactive visualizations. Traditionally, journalists have used data and charts as evidence to support a claim, often in the form of a static image embedded within a larger body of text. For example, you might be reading a news article that uses a chart to support some claim it makes in the overall narrative. I say here data around narrative to refer to the fact that the narrative is the focus of the journalistic piece and the data merely exists in a secondary and supporting role. Data journalism, on the other hand, places the data front and center and builds a narrative around the data. For example, a data journalist might have some interesting data set and try to tell a story about what's happening in that data set. In comparison to an article that has a static chart embedded to support claims made, a data journalist might have an interactive chart which they then use labels, annotations, and sidebars to add context to the data. And by adding context to the data, they'll create a narrative around the story they want to tell with their chart. The second difference I want to point out is that traditional journalism often presents its information as a sequence of events, A, then B, then C, to create a linear narrative. Data journalism, on the other hand, leverages interactivity to enable much more complex and varied narrative structures, allowing the user to discover their own data story, possibly from going from event A to event C, back to event A, maybe going to some external article or other information Z, which leads back to conclusion B. In this case, the structure of the story and the narrative that you tell may be different and customized for every reader. Whereas in traditional journalism, you might write a single story with a single linear flow, so no matter who's reading it, the story stays the same. And the last aspect that I wanted to compare was the method of delivery or dissemination. Traditional journalism is published either in a physical form, like a newspaper or magazine, or on the web, but often only as static HTML, thought of like a digital book. The new visualizations coming out of data journalism outlets like the New York Times or 538 leverage many of the open web technologies that we discussed in Lesson 1 to create both more accessible articles and also interactive visualizations that enable much richer interaction from the reader.